What is going on, everybody? And welcome to another episode of SCUM. This right here, as you all know, is the podcast where we dive into the deepest, darkest, murkiest waters with a plethora of legendary guests. I am, of course, your host, your bastard of ceremonies, the number one scumbag, Rex Ruger. That's REXXX. You might also know me as AKA the King of Sleaze, AKA the Hair Metal High Priest, and most importantly, AKA Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. Take a look, folks. You're looking at the son of glam, the front man for the band. Just smoked a few grams. I got a million fans. I'm your ice cream man, Mr. Wop Babaloo Baba Wop Bam Bam Shazam. God damn. Feeling good? Everybody looking good? Coming to you as always from the lush lavender lounge of love. Joined as always by the Keith Hernandez puppet. It's the No Frills podcast because you get no frills because you get plenty of thrills, and that is including looking at this face and the faces of my legendary guest. And today is no different. We got a good one. He's here now. We're chopping it up with him. Hey, Stab.
Hello.
Rudy, how are you, buddy?
I'm blessed. How about yourself?
I listen, man. I feel very blessed to have you here, man. It's a real honor to be able to talk to you. Huge fan. Done almost 100 of these, and I don't usually get nervous, but I got to admit, I'm a little awestruck, Rudy.
Well, that's all gonna go away by the end of the conversation.
Hopefully, by the end of it, you're just my buddy Rudy, and that's it. And I'll have you know, Rudy, that you might want to be a little starstruck yourself because you are looking at Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. right here.
I am. It's really distracting because I thought it might be you years ago.
Yes,
because I can't recall Dave having bands like that.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great endorsement from you, Rudy. I take that as a very high compliment. Very high compliment. So you know what?
Actually, I think you look better yourself than Diamond Dave does.
That's a great way to come into an interview, Rudy. You know, I mean, flattery will really get you places. It opens a lot of doors. It really does. Obviously, for people that have lived under a rock and don't know anything about the music world for the last 50 years or whatever you've been doing it, Rudy Sarzo from, where do I even start the list? Quiet Riot, obviously, OZZY, Whitesnake. Who the fuck haven't you played with, Rudy? You've done it all.
Yeah, it's I'm being very blessed, but the most important thing about my musical journey to me, it's what I learned from playing with everybody.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that because I when I was going over my bullet points and stuff I wanted to talk to you about, when you worked for specifically Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne, obviously Ozzy, certainly no secret that Ozzy has had his turbulent patches in his life, his maniacal phases where he's gone, really over the top, the partying, the excess, all that stuff. But yet he's always maintained being able to be a fixture in the music scene. And I think that's just great business on behalf of not only him, but Sharon. Did you glean any wisdom in your time in the Ozzy camp from them, from a business standpoint?
Oh, absolutely. From Sharon, 90% of what I learned about the music industry, 90%, because the other 10% keeps fluctuating.
Right.
As technology advances and things you have to readapt.
Right.
So you always, but the outcome is always the same. I've learned from Sharon. Actually, I watched her. She's relentless, and she does such great care of the band. What's really interesting because it's rarely do I hear the word work for, because we musicians, we play.
Right.
So when you say you play for, oh yeah, I play for. Work for? No, we really don't work.
Yeah.
I get paid for traveling. So that's the biggest pain in the ass for me right now. For everybody else that does the flyaways. And then you have the tour buses, the tour bus tours, where you're away from home for weeks and months. And I mean, I've been doing this since 1981, and the last thing I want to do is be away from my family for such extended period of time. Especially in the United States, where we do shows on the weekend and then we fly home. I mean, if we were in foreign territory, it would make sense, but not domestically. you know.
What is your itinerary like? Because you bring up a good point. As you get older, obviously, you know, our perspective on life changes, and you know, certain things do enter the fold, i.e., families and children and all that stuff. You know, how do you approach touring? Is that something that you sit around with your family and consciously think about? Like, here's going to be my itinerary. Here's what I'm comfortable doing at this stage of my career.
Yeah, I send my wife updates for our bookings as I get them. And so she becomes aware of it. And it's usually just the weekends. There's a very few dates during the week because, you know, maybe it might be a festival. That's like a week-long festival. Then you're going to play on a Wednesday or a Thursday. But usually shows are on the weekends, you know. And, you know, it's... I've had this conversation a long time ago with my wife. We've known each other since 1981. That's like what, 42 years now.
Yeah.
And we've been married for this going to be 39 this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So, you know, we've had this a long time ago. Otherwise, I don't think it would have worked out, you know, neglecting to have that conversation, you know. So we understand what each other's you know, what we give up on life, you know, being together, you know, we understand that and we acknowledge it and we try to keep it to a minimum, you know. So yeah, you know, we know what's going on.
What's the key, do you think? Now, you know, that is certainly an accomplishment no matter what field you work in. And I myself, as a married guy coming up on 25 years myself, certainly understand you know, that a marriage is obviously work, but what's the key ingredient that being a working, traveling, touring musician, you know, what would you say the key component is to keeping a marriage alive for that long?
Well, first of all, being faithful.
Yeah.
You know, you make a commitment to your relationship and you keep it.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, it's something that is organic. If you have that across the board in your whole life, if you have integrity as a human being, it would transpose to your art, your family, anything that you do in life. You know, do it with integrity. So when you make a commitment, you know, to your other half to be faithful, as you do always do, you know, when you enter marriage, you keep that integrity all the way through.
I love that. I love that sentiment. So obviously, very exciting, I think, as a Quiet Riot fan, having you in the band, especially now more than ever, because I think it gives it certainly, it adds that that pedigree, obviously, with, you know, the passing of Frankie and, of course, Kevin several years ago. Rest in peace to both of them. Huge stars. But where is Quiet Riot at right now as a band? Do you feel like this is, you know, because you see a lot of these bands that have been around a long time, and, you know, you see on Google the laundry list of ex-members, you know, the dreaded ex-members list. Do you feel like right now, though, that this is a nice, solid, stable lineup, and do you like where Quiet Riot is right now?
Oh, absolutely. First of all the other members besides myself have all been handpicked by previous members.
Yes.
Kevin Dubrow was picked. Kevin Dubrow picked Alex Grossi 20 years ago. He's the third guitar player in Quiet Riot. Randy Rhoads, Carlos Cavasso, Alex Grossi. Kevin groomed him. So he's, you know, he breathes, he lives Quiet Riot. He understands and he's worked with Kevin and Frankie. You know, and now so then you have Jizzy Pearl, who Frankie picked him. But Kevin was a fan of Love Hate.
Yes.
You know, so endorsed right there. And then you have Johnny Kelly, who was handpicked by Frankie to not as much as a replacement originally, because Frankie, to the very end, he thought he was going to beat it, you know, cancer. And come back at some point. But he picked Johnny. You know, and Kevin, the first time I ever heard Typo Negative, Kevin brought the CD on tour bus. And when we reunited in 1997, that was like a staple what was being played. So definitely Kevin was a fan, of Type O Negative. So you have endorsements from, both guys
Yeah.
in
And that
in
means
the
something.
band. Oh, that means everything to
Yeah,
me,
it
because
does.
I just walked into something that was already accepted, mentored,
Right.
and illuminated by the previous members that we are no longer with us.
Right. Right. Um, I'm curious, and I consider I consider all the guests that I have on here. I have them on for a reason. I have a great amount of respect and admiration. I don't just pluck names out of a hat and have people on here. I'm always a fan of their work and consider them on some level, legends, geniuses, whatever word you want to put on it, yourself included. But you've also had the opportunity to work with, in my opinion, several geniuses. And I want to touch on Randy Rhoads. When was the moment that you first realized, wow, this guy is really something special? Do you remember there being like a monumental moment where you either watched him play or saw something in him that said, wow, this guy really is a genius on the guitar?
Yeah, it was like peeling layers about discovering Randy, because what happened is I first saw them play Quiet Riot, and that's how I met Kevin, because I was very impressed with what I was watching, and I just walked into a club called the Starwood, and they were performing.
Yep.
And I watched him, and at that time I already been around the U.S. touring in clubs, and watching what else was going on out there,
Right.
and so I told him, I said, hey,
I lost
introduce
I lost your camera. I can't see you.
Oh, you can't see me. Oh,
No.
okay.
Lost your,
We must do something
there
about
you go.
that.
There you go.
Yay.
There you go. All right, go ahead. Please continue.
Okay.
Yep, you're at the Starwood.
Okay.
You go see them play.
Yeah. And I told Kevin, hey, listen, I introduced myself, and I've been around, touring, and I've seen just about everything that's out there, trying to get a record deal. And I think that you guys are on the right path. Keep doing what you're doing, and you guys are gonna make it. And about a year later, I was ready to come back to LA. Every time that I ran out of money, I went back out, to do some club dates around the Midwest, and then come back with some money. And I was ready the following week when I got a phone call from Kevin saying, hey, we're looking for a bass player. And everybody tells me that you're the guy that we're looking for. So I said, yeah, great. I'll be there in next week. And I went down, auditioned, and I got the gig. So when I first saw Randy performing live was within the parameters of Quiet Riot.
Right.
Then when I auditioned, we stretched out a little bit more. He started playing things that I did not hear him play when he was performing within the context of the set list of the band. We started doing some blues. They wanted to see how far I can go musically,
Right.
the genres. And by then I have been playing clubs so much that I was playing anything from country to funk and everything in
It's all
between.
old hat at this point. Yeah.
Top 40.
Yeah.
Back in the day used to be You're Having My Baby from Paul Anka. You had to play that.
Right.
After the Loving, Engelbert Humperdinck, and then turn around and do some disco. So I was like,
whatever's putting food on the table, right? I mean, do what you do.
Well, it's we didn't have, back in the day, going to Berkeley, type of schools or school of rock. If you wanted to learn how to be a musician, you had to go there and play.
On the job training. Yep.
On the job training. That's it. And I even studied music in college, but the curriculum was way slower pace than what I was doing already live, so I changed my major to something else. So then I started teaching at Musonia, and that was the first time I actually saw Randy playing acoustic classical guitar in between breaks from students coming in and out, and I'm going like, I didn't know you could play like that. And he says, yeah, because when he would do something classical during Quiet Riot on stage, it will be with the electric, which is a whole different feel and sound, And to hear him actually play some classical pieces on the acoustic guitar, it was like, whoa. And then Randy joins Ozzy and comes out with these incredible compositions, for Blizzard and Diarrhea Madman. Then I start touring with him, and I see Randy, taking lessons. Once he got the award for best new talent for Guitar Player magazine. He got that in 1981, December 30, 1981, backstage at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. And he realized that people were listening to what he was doing and they were paying attention. So he just he went on on seeking knowledge journey, and everywhere he went, he tried to get music lessons.
Yeah.
He would take out the yellow pages and look at the ads, for stores or whatever was available near where we were staying at, so he could take a music lesson. Most of the times, he wound up paying for it and giving
Right.
whoever was the teacher a lesson because he was more advanced. But he was always looking for that. I mean, nowadays, oh my God, just like I do, he could have been going to YouTube and catching all these master classes,
Right.
and just learning in his room.
I think that speaks volumes about him, though, because even though he was already considered this maestro, he wasn't so pretentious where he thought, I've got this all figured out. He realized that he could always keep upping his game, so to speak.
Yeah. Because Randy was always a teacher. He was he was born into a musical family. His mom and dad, music professors. The family still owns a music school called Musonia. He was playing classical, reading music, studying harmony theory before he was even in a rock band.
Yeah,
he got in a rock band so he could hang out with all the kids.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this is documented. You'll find this information. Randy gave notice that he was going to go back to school. He was going to go to school to get his master's degree in music while he was playing with Ozzy.
Wow. So at the height of his career, he still has a yearning to learn.
Oh yeah, now more than ever, because now he says, people are listening. They're paying attention to what I'm doing.
Yeah. I'm interested in your upbringing, though, because what age did you come here from Cuba?
10. Almost 11.
And what was the big dream? Was music your dream? Was that the career path you were going to take all along, or did you ever have aspirations? Even when you were in Cuba, or even coming here as a child, did you have aspirations to do anything else, or did the music bug bite you pretty early?
No, I mean, I went from wanting to be in the Beatles to wanting to be James Bond. To wanting to be everything in between.
Yeah.
Because you go for what's happening at the time. Whatever the girls like.
Right.
Girls like James Bond. Okay. Girls like Paul McCartney. Okay.
But obviously there can be, obviously the parental, how parents view their children when they come from different ethnicities or different backgrounds. Were your parents in favor of this? Were they strict? Were they kind of liberal? Did they embrace this idea of you being a musician?
My parents were on survival mode when we came here to the United States. So yes, they were paying attention to us, but they were more interested in putting food on the table.
Yeah.
And which that was, and putting a roof over our head. We were refugees.
Right.
We were not, and it took us about a year and a half to get our documentation, everything, a sponsor, visas, passport, tickets, everything to leave the country, and enter the United States. So they were more interested in that. Yes, they supported us. We used to rehearse in my brother's and my bedroom, which was next to my parents' bedroom, and my dad would go to sleep with all the cacophony going on. Of having a actual band.
Those are good parents.
Wonderful parents. But if you gave it up to my mom, she would have rather me be a NASA scientist.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah. It always seems like parents always want you to aspire to something scholarly. I get more artists out here who say that that their parents accepted it, but weren't really doing cartwheels over the fact that you want to be a musician.
I gotta tell you, my dad, up until before he passed, he was waiting for me to get a real job.
Yeah. Now, why the bass? I'm curious. Why the bass? What did you hear somebody? How did you fall in love with that particular instrument? Was it by default? Did you start on something else, or or how did the bass get its hooks in you?
Well, falling in love with the instrument is something that took a while. I mean, I liked it, but I am not as head over heels about the instrument as I am now today.
Right.
You
Right.
know? So that had its own journey. Because actually I started off with, besides school band, whatever instruments were available in school, whether it was trumpet, I just didn't have enough lungs for the trumpet.
Yeah.
And trombone after that, because nobody wanted to play trombone, in the school band. And then came the guitar. And my brother and we would share a guitar that my parents bought on Spiegel catalog. I know any kid, what? Well, a Spiegel catalog was like Amazon.
Yeah, back then, yeah.
Things were shipped to you. It was exactly the same thing.
The good old days out there, kids.
Yeah. and so what happened was we were living in Jersey, and my parents moved back down to Miami. And back in the day, pre-internet, our network was Kids in the Block. Our block had like little hangout and a lot of kids, because we went back to a Cuban neighborhood. And so it was like everybody, when the Cubans just kind of like moved, like they call it Little Havana. Right. Back then, it wasn't really Little Havana. It was just our neighborhood, the hood, and every block had a band, a little band. And when I'm talking about a band, it's just 4 or 5 guys getting together in somebody's garage with phone books. Were really the Yellow Pages were really popular. Yeah, as snare drum. So it will be a guy beating away on that. A couple of guys with acoustic guitar, and if you bought an amp, you were guaranteed a spot.
Oh yeah, you had to be. You were the shit if you had an amp. If
you had an amp. So my parents got me a Silvertone amplifier from Sears. Again, that happened to be our favorite music store at the time. And we went to Sears, and they got me a Silvertone with 115-inch speaker, and I picked that because it had the most inputs. Yeah. So everybody was guaranteed to plug into that one amplifier. Yeah. And the reason why I started playing the bass is because I showed up at the garage and I introduced myself and I said I want to join the band, and they look at me and they look at my acoustic guitar, not even electric. Yeah. And they say, "No, we got too many guitar players. If you want to join, you got to play bass." And I said, "What is that?" And they said, "Well, it's like playing a guitar solo throughout the whole song." I said, "That's for me." Yeah.
Yeah, and it's worked out. So obviously you've been doing this a long time. I'm sure you're on record numerous places, citing your influences. And I hate to ask that question that way, but who are some guys even to this day who, when you hear them play a bass, you just love their playing, that you just will perk up your ears and listen? Who are some guys that you admire?
Everybody. I'm always listening. As a matter of fact, my wife's pet peeve is that she'll be talking to me, and if there's music in the background, it's kind of like that Seinfeld episode when the guy zones out when he hears like the Eagles singing. Yeah, like, that's me with every song you hear.
Yeah. But having spent having a good majority of your career during when album sales were flourishing, and obviously it's no secret the music industry very different now. First of all, what do you think of all this stuff? What's your opinion on streaming platforms and all this kind of stuff? You've run the whole gamut from back when people were buying physical products and albums and record contracts, and a lot of that stuff just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. I know that a lot of musicians are not really pleased with the kind of rate that we get. Yeah. For streaming, but I got to tell you, for the first time in our industry, I can tell you that whatever the rate is, that's what you're going to get. You get transparency, which was not really the case with most major labels.
Fair enough.
Back in the day, to the point that even the Beatles had to audit their record label, and they found money. Yeah. So if you're ripping off the Beatles, you have no heart. How do you sleep at night?
I know. I know. That's
unbelievable.
True. But and I I don't know how often this happens to you, but when you're out in your travels and you're out on the road, you know, just playing devil's advocate here, a young musician, you know, wants to be pointed in the right direction. Where does a band start nowadays? Obviously, you can't point at album sales. Is it just getting out there and making your bones out there live? Is it making videos? I see bands still put videos up on YouTube. Like, you know, how do you catapult yourself these days? Because there's not really a specific formula anymore like that used to be when labels were just grabbing up bands off the Sunset Strip back in the day, and just, you know, it was much easier to get a record deal. Well, what do you say to a young musician?
I think because it became easy, more people could do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which do not really necessarily mean that you're getting a lot of quality.
Right.
Music. Look at, the greatest artwork in life has been created just from the passion of creating it. Van Gogh sold one painting.
Yep.
And it's to his brother in his lifetime. Van Gogh. Okay. You got, you know, the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
That could have been a private for the Pope just to view that. Now it's open to the public.
Right.
There's no guarantee that your art is going to withstand the test of time.
Right.
You know, there could be an earthquake and that whole thing goes down.
Sure.
As a matter of fact, the Sistine Chapel has had to be refurbished periodically. You know,
a few times.
So then that did not keep. I believe it was Michelangelo who painted that.
Yes. Yep.
From doing this masterpiece that it's timeless.
Yeah.
You know, that takes your breath away. You know, it's so as an artist, and I gotta tell you this, I'm gonna sound really naive, but you know,
that's
things
okay.
were very different when I was a teenager.
Sure.
There was a separation between management and you know, the executive rank of the music industry and the musicians, the creators. There was this Wizard of Oz curtain that you could not really peek and see the wizard.
Yeah.
You keep creating.
Yeah.
You give us the stuff, and we'll take care of the business. You go.
But you don't get like you don't get a peek behind the curtain. Yeah.
No, you don't get to hang out with the heads of the label. Maybe at dinner once in a while they're gonna present you some award, you know, something like that. Yeah, but you're not like texting them.
Right.
Not that we had text back then, but you know, you were not a phone call away. You know?
Right.
You have to go through your manager or your lawyer to talk to these people.
There were channels. Yep.
Yeah. So basically, it was all about the creative experience, that aspect. Just create, make it, and then go out in front of an audience and perform your music and see what kind of a reaction you get.
Yeah.
You know, that to me it used to be, and it still is.
Yeah.
It's the outcome. Why are you making music? I mean, nobody's promising you that you're gonna make it in the music industry. You know, it's just like anything else. It's a calling.
Right.
It's a calling to be a musician. You cannot help it. And I believe that everybody has the right to be creative in some kind of art form. And if you pick music, or there's musicians who also they are painters, or they take photographs. You know, it's not just about the art of music. They express themselves in different mediums. So there should never be any sort of a parameter as to what you can only do. This is your box, and whatever fits in the box, that you're allowed to be. No. It's art. You know, it's the truest human experience that there is.
Yeah. Now, when you spent the few years that you spent in Whitesnake, and I know from doing my homework on you that that a lot of your playing is rooted in the blues, and I've always thought that Whitesnake, obviously has a very strong blues kind of bend to it, and I loved you as a fit in that band. How do you end up in that band?
Very simple. But you know, you just trigger some things when you mentioned about my blues influence. Actually, I was originally, even before I heard blues,
Hmm.
I was influenced by Afro-Cuban music.
Okay. Okay.
And if you go back to the roots of Afro-Cuban music and anything having to be African Caribbean,
Right.
Caribbean African,
Right.
right? That later was transferred, to the United States.
Yep.
That's where the separation begins.
Okay.
Okay. And I hate to use the word slave, but I'm not going to rewrite history here.
You got to call
Okay.
it what it is. Yeah,
It
absolutely.
was what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
So when the slaves were brought to the Caribbean and they were in Spanish colonies, like Cuba was,
Right.
they were allowed to play their native instrument, like usually percussion instruments.
A lot of percussion, right? and a big
Yeah.
focus on rhythms. Yep.
Yeah, there was some string instrument, like the banjo originally is an African instrument.
Right.
Okay, so when the slaves were brought to the same, like there would be the same ships, some were kept in the Caribbean or dispersed around the different islands, and some were taken to the United States, right? When they came to the Anglo colonies, they removed their percussion instruments because they fear of they would communicate with other plantations and start revolts. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So that's when they start taking away the percussion instrument,
Yep.
except Louisiana, which happened to belong to France.
Yep. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Louisiana. Okay. So now in Louisiana, that's where we have jazz. That's where we have those rhythms.
Right.
Because they come. If it wasn't for Louisiana, we would be screwed. We would be doing polkas right now.
Yeah.
So that's where you get the blues. But Afro-Cuban music and the blues, they come from the same cradle.
Right. Right. Yeah. So
that's what I grew up with first.
Right.
And since I started listening to music before rock and roll existed, I'm 72 years old. So when I was like a kid, my parents used to take me to all these outdoor, it's the Caribbean, so everything is usually outdoor, not indoor, because the weather is really, really beautiful in the island, so they would have these big bands events that they would be playing, and it would be usually jazz, Latin jazz, Dizzy Gillespie, which was, we're talking the 50s. Jazz was very popular back then.
Oh, yes. Oh,
so the combination of putting, Latin percussion with jazz language, that's what I grew up with, and then we came to the United States, and then the British invasion happened, and I discovered the blues, because there was, especially towards later on, because you had R&B with the British invasion. You have the Rolling Stones and the Beatles doing some of Motown and and all of that. And then the Stones were more blues oriented, but it wasn't really blues. It was like their version of the blues.
Sure.
And then living in Miami, which is the South, then I started getting exposed to the local blues scene that was happening there.
Yeah.
So that's when I started. And then you get bands like Cream, Hendrix, Free, blues bass bands, Led Zeppelin, the first couple of records, and all of that. So that was like, okay, now we actually can play this music and put that's youthful energy that bands like Led Zeppelin would inject into the blues.
Right. So does David Coverdale, does he reach out to you? Was he familiar with your work in Quiet Riot? Does he come and kind of more or less, quote unquote, recruit you, or how do you land that spot with him?
Okay, Whitesnake was the opening band for Quiet Riot during our Condition Critical in 1984. So he got to see me play every night.
Yep.
So when it came time that he decided to make a change, actually we were in the middle of a tour, and I had announced before we started our Quiet Riot tour to the guys that at the end of the tour, once my commitments that I all the shows that we had committed to, once that tour was done, I was going to leave the band.
Yep.
So we kept it under wraps. And so the last day of the tour with Whitesnake, that leg of the tour, we threw a party for them. And David gives me a hug as we're saying goodbye. And he whispers, someday soon we're going to be playing together. And I'm thought, How did he know that I'm leaving the band? So you know, I end the tour, and by then, Tommy Aldridge and I, we started putting a band together, and we get a call from their management, and they ask us to come in the office. We go there, they talk to us, and they offer us the spot in 1985. And since I had been touring with them, I knew that there was some conflict in the band that was still there, and I just did not want to leave one situation to join another situation. So I declined. A couple of years later, we get a call from John Colatner to invite us to play on the to appear the video on the video, which is lip sync. You know?
Yep, of course.
The video for Still the Night.
Yep.
You know. Yep. And we did that, and we looked at each other, all the guys, Vivian, Adrian, Tommy, myself, David, and I said, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
See, David put together a wish list of who he wanted in the band.
Yeah.
At that point, and it was everybody: Adrian, Vivian, Tommy, myself. So that's how the whole thing came about.
And you struck and maintained a pretty good friendship with Adrian, who's not a guy that we hear about a lot, but a guy whose guitar playing I really, really love. I feel like he's such a force. Can you give us any updates on the Adrian Vandenberg that seems to have gone missing in action on us?
Is he? Oh, he's not missing in action. He's he happens to be doing very well.
Okay, good.
It's a party animal out in Holland.
Oh, nice.
Holland.
Okay.
And he's got a new record coming out. He's going to be on the Monsters of Cruise.
Awesome.
Monsters of Rock cruise.
Yeah.
He goes out every year, puts out a record. You know, his last one I played on.
Okay.
And he happened to title it 2020.
Okay.
And it was released in 2020 during the pandemic, and I thought, you know, of all the titles of the record you can come up with, you know. Yeah. And I say, you know, your next record, you should call it after the bubonic plague when that happened. Put that year on it.
Now, I'm glad you brought up COVID. What was that time like for you as a creative person? Did you find it when we were all hunkered down in quarantine? Did you get a lot done creatively, or did you just kind of say this is going to be just a time of respite? I'm going to just kind of step back and not do anything. What was that time like for you? A lot of uncertainty going on around that time, especially people in the arts and entertainment field. Everything was kind of put to a halt, no touring, any of that kind of stuff. How did you occupy that time?
I did a lot of, what do you call that? When a bunch of people got together and we did our tracks away, in our homes, and then we put little videos together.
Oh, okay, okay. So you still stayed active then, musically?
Oh God, yeah. So yeah, and people decided to make records. So I played a lot of records. And made a lot of new friends and discovered a lot of new talent. And what I did is I went on a search for the healing qualities of music.
Okay.
And I started with the golden ratio, Fibonacci number, Tesla, went down the rabbit hole, and ended up with quantum physics.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, what you're speaking of?
What would you like to know?
Just what you mean by the healing properties of music. When you're deducing all this information, how did you arrive at it, and what is your conclusion on it?
Yeah, and it has to do, from my research, anything from the tuning that we use. Traditionally, up until like about a century ago, we did not have the standard of 440, which is not a copacetic tuning to the elements.
Okay.
Like there's videos on, it's called cymatics.
Okay.
It's actually a German word, kymatics.
Okay.
But in English it's cymatics. And it's the study of waves, frequencies on the elements, whatever, earth, wind, fire, water, all of that. How the frequencies affect the shape of it. And I don't know if you ever seen like the experiments where they put there's a flat plate, and they put some salt or sand, and they pipe in frequency to that plate, a note, a frequency, and it creates a mandala or a design that is perfect in dimensions. You know, everything reflects. It's a pattern, a perfect pattern.
Right.
And if you do something that is not a frequency that is not in tune with the universe, basically, you know, then the pattern is not.
It's chaotic.
Balance. It's chaotic pattern. That's what cymatics is. But if you watch videos, I mean, there's a lot of videos about that, and it'll show you the effect on fire, on like particles, like you know, sand or salt, water, air, everything. Everything is affected by sound, to the point that we are made out of frequencies. You have two elements, or not. It comes down to this, you know, on the subatomic level, you're going to have waves and you got particles, and everything is waves until a wave is observed, then it turns into a particle, because your consciousness would create whatever you think of.
That's fascinating.
From that wave. So that's, you know, I've stood on stage with so many different bands. Now, if I would have been only in one band ever in my whole career, then I would have not had the perception of, like, when I play with different bands, it's different reactions to different music, different songs. You draw a different consciousness. To come to your shows, different people. With a collective consciousness. It's all different. It's not like the same people are going to show up to every single band that I play with. People will go, "Oh, what have you been doing? Did you retire?" No, I've been playing with these guys. But since you're not into their music, you have no idea that I'm playing with it. You know. So so I just started saying, okay, so let me see what healing quality, because some bands that I play with have more of a healing effect on people than other bands, you know. And I'm looking like, wow, what makes that up, you know? And it just came down to certain frequencies and certain sequence of notes, and the lyrics. The lyrics have power. Lyrics have frequency.
No doubt about that.
So when you have the marriage of words and music together, you know, certain songs. I mean, I to be backstage and have people come back and say, the song "Here I Go Again" changed my life. Had an impact on them. You know. Or you know, it could, and then that's a certain type of people. And then you get somebody that will say, "Oh, my favorite song is Mr. Crowley." And that's a whole different type of people.
And I love the fact that you're saying music is therapeutic, though, because my day job, I work in healthcare. I am a nurse, and they will bring in musicians sometimes to play for the elderly folks. And I do believe that music is extremely therapeutic. It really is. It really is.
And there's certain experiments being done out there with frequencies and music in general. I mean, as you know, let's say if you play for somebody who has Alzheimer's and you play them music of their era, it brings them back. It reconnects them.
Absolutely. I've seen that firsthand. And going backpedaling for a minute, when you talked about the "Here I Go," or the "Still of the Night" video and lip syncing, I'm interested as a musician to get your take on where you stand on these bands on YouTube that are really taking a whipping. Legendary bands, but you know, i.e. the Motley Crues and the Kisses of the world, where they're getting kind of pinched for these backing tracks, or, you know, using smoke and mirror type tricks in the live setting. Is a band able to get to a point where they should be allowed to get away with that just because they've reached a legendary status and, you know, they can't replicate what they did years and years ago? Do you give them a pass on that, or do you think the live experience ought to be, you know, kind of warts and all?
Well, when I talk about doing a video, we did a few Whitesnake videos for the '87 record. That the whole band. When you make a video, you're lip syncing.
A video completely A video, admittedly, very different than the live setting.
And I'm going to leave it as that.
Okay. but in the live setting, you know, should bands be using any tricks or any of that kind of stuff if they need to?
That's their decision. It has nothing to do with me.
If it makes the show better, though,
you
have no problem with it.
If people show up,
that's all that matters at the end of the day.
You know, people vote with their wallet.
That's true. That's true. I'm interested in now we're coming up on you guys are out doing dates for the 40th year anniversary of Quiet Riot. When you look back at the
of actually mental health record.
Right, of the mental health record, yes,
Yeah.
which a huge record, certainly a seminal record, you know, for not only back in that time period, but it's obviously very much proved that it can stand the test of time, as can all the Quiet Riot albums. But when you look back at that period of time, what do you think Quiet Riot's legacy is?
Well, it's very clear. It's the mental health record. The fact that we were the first debut by a metal band to reach #1 on Billboard magazine.
Yeah,
and I mean, that's the legacy of the band right there.
Yeah. And when you when you shift your career and you tour with Ozzy, you know, and you start becoming part of the Ozzy camp, because Ozzy is such already at this point already such a prominent figure in the metal world. But you know, you obviously had some albums and some experience under your own belt. Is there ever an intimidation or a nervousness, even for somebody like you, when you come to a new situation, maybe, you know, when you're going to work with an Ozzy or you're going to work with a David Coverdale because of their past work? Or is it just kind of like you just approach it as just, you know, another gig? This is what I do.
That's such a good question. And the best way I can explain it, which is the reality of the whole thing. See, before I got the call to join Ozzy, I had an epiphany. I was sleeping on the floor in Kevin Dubrow's apartment, at Starving Musician, and I have been reading the Bible, and I made peace with God. And I wrote about this in my book. It's in first chapter, the ending of the first chapter.
Okay.
That as long as my fingers were going to keep moving, I was going to keep trying.
Yeah.
But if I never made it, that's fine, because my relationship with God is more important than anything else. So I was really at peace with myself during that whole thing. There could be chaos going on. I knew that if I leave things up to God, because I got the phone call a couple of days later to join Ozzy, that it was going to be okay.
And I love that sentiment. I embrace it. I wholeheartedly 110% agree to that. I ascribe to that in my own lifestyle, that obviously there's a plan a lot bigger than us that, you know, that we just, you know, have to put our faith and our trust into. Do you think, though, that connection with your spirituality is what allowed you to be a survivor of that time? Because you said it, you know, obviously a lot of chaos, a lot of stuff, a lot of people that didn't even make it through that time period. Obviously, especially the 80s in particular, certainly, you know, a decade of decadence, you know, a lot of people, you know, doing things in excess, you know what I mean? Do you think that connection to your spirituality is what made you a survivor of the music business?
Absolutely, and it still does. I mean, and then again, you know, I had times when I had this really superhuman faith. I call it superhuman because it was like, you know, and then things start getting whittled away. You know, they start chipping at you. You know, the things, life in general, the tests that you go through in life. You know, and then it became my road back to my superhuman faith, which I'm still working on, because it's been a long road. See, when I had that feeling, I didn't have any responsibility except to myself and to God. That was it. I had just started playing with Ozzy. I didn't have a place to stay. The Osbournes, Sharon, because she wasn't married to Ozzy yet. She let me stay at her family's mansion. I had a bungalow there. I lived with them. I was on the tour bus with them all the time. I was incredibly well taken care of. And then I started collecting things or adding things to my life, which is my wife. You know,
that's a good one to add.
My girlfriend that became my wife. So I made a family. So once you have a family, it's not just about you. It's not even about you.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's about the people that you're responsible for, your family.
Yes.
So sometimes it's a little bit challenging because now you're not just thinking about yourself, you're thinking about others and what can you do for others.
Right. The narrative changes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it becomes life becomes more challenging. And it shouldn't, and your faith should always remain exactly the same, because it's like you have now created a family.
Right.
You know, which is our purpose in life, to create, you know. So now, as far as your humanity goes, you're creating a family here, and your faith will be even stronger then, you know. But there's always some dynamics going on that you have to deal with.
Yeah. Now, you know, I hate to not keep it. I certainly not you know, don't want to go down a downtrodden path, but obviously I saw the Quiet Riot documentary when Frankie was putting the band back together and going through singers, and you were prominently featured in it too. What did you think about the period? And it wasn't a long period when James Durbin was the singer. I know a lot of people the band took a lot of flack. Oh, he won American Idol. Does he deserve that spot or whatever? I thought he did a great job.
I never met him. I did not even see them playing with the band, so I really have no opinion on it.
Okay.
I mean,
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, so talk to me a little bit about because you are known for your philanthropy. What are some of the charitable things that are really near and dear to you? That you really rally around.
I was not aware that I was known for my philanthropy, because we keep it really quiet, because basically the charity, the foundation that I'm a part of, is based in Canada.
Okay.
Even though we just recently did an event in conjunction with Alice Cooper's foundation down in Phoenix area. So that was like the first time that we've done something in the United States. But it's Canadian centric. It's called BANK, which is a Benevolent Artist National Charity. It's based out of Calgary, but we do shows in Edmonton, and now we're spreading out to different territories in Canada, Vancouver and Toronto this year. And we've raised over $5 million. I think it's about 6 with the last event. And monies go to different charities. We have supported the National Music Center, which is like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Canadian version of it. It's in Calgary. Beautiful building and incredible displays and museum. If anybody's out there in Calgary or visits Calgary, make sure to visit the EMC, the National Music Center, and NMC, in Calgary. We've done shows. This is music, musicians getting together to do these events, and we have Ellis Hall, who was the first artist signed by Ray Charles to his label. He's an incredible musician and composer and singer, performer. We have Sass Jordan is one of our members. And we have so many musicians that come in and out, and we always bring in some other special guests. So we had Emmylou Harris doing shows with us at one point, and then the charity, we supported her own foundation, which is called Napoleon, named after a puppy. It's a shelter.
Okay.
And that she has in Nashville. So we spread it. A lot of the money goes to native Canadian native.
Okay.
Natives and to homeless shelters in Vancouver, and so it gets spread around really nicely.
And you're also really big into and of course a lot of this is just research that I've done, picking apart different things to talk to you about. Animal rights is a big you're a big supporter of that.
Yeah. I mean, we support that. Also supporting awareness. Linda Blair has the foundation.
Okay.
Animal rights. So and there's so many around California. I am not directly involved with any, meaning that I don't go because I'm always on tour.
Right.
go and visit the shelter and take the puppies out or anything like that.
Right,
But
right.
whenever we have the events and we have money allocated for animal shelters, we take care of that.
Now, we touched on Frankie a little bit before. Rest in peace, the great Frankie Banali, who was really he was really the well, for a while there, he was the only original member in the band for a while. Just how he handled his illness and how he faced it head on and tackled it in such a heroic, admirable way. How much involvement when he was going through that? Because I know you guys are, we're very, very dear friends. What was your role when he was going through that? As a supportive friend, did he lean on people around him a lot? Did you have a lot of talks with him during that time?
I was one of the first people he told that he had stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if you watch the video, there's a video for a song called "I Can't Hold On."
Okay.
And there's a video. The song was released last December.
Yep.
A few months ago. And when he had me come over, because we're neighbors, we live about 10 minutes away from each other. He had me come over to tell me his wife, Regina, who is the director of the Quiet Riot documentary.
Yep.
She captured that on her phone.
Yep.
Him telling me about it, and if you watch that video, it's all in there. And when I already been through that with Ronnie James Dio.
Yep.
But every time somebody says, hey, I got this, whatever it might be, cancer or whatever, you thinking, okay, they're gonna beat it. They're gonna beat it because they're so positive and strong about it.
And it's what we want. It's what we want to believe. We certainly always want the best outcome.
Yeah, and I believe that in our own perception, we can contribute to that.
Right.
If we in our own minds feel like this person is going to make it, we're helping them heal.
Right.
By not bringing negativity into their existence.
Right.
Or into our own perception of this reality that we live, that certain people come into our lives because we draw them in. Right. With collective consciousness, And so we're all connected. We're all connected, which is one of the things that, the principles of quantum physics, quantum entanglement, we are connected, And so our thoughts are connected, and you can help people heal, And so he starts getting medication. He's still touring. And then COVID happened. Once COVID happened, it was like, I couldn't see him. And that's when he, COVID happened. And then, as a matter of fact, when he passed away August 20th of 2020, we still didn't have a vaccine available to the masses.
Right.
Yeah. But I was able to see him the day before he passed away. His wife called me in and says, listen, Frankie's calling out your name. And so I went over to their house, and he was in a hospital bed in his bedroom with a hospice nurse.
Right.
With him. I spent time with him. He was on morphine. Spent some time with him. Then the next day I got a phone call from Regina, and she says, listen, we have to take him over to the hospital.
Yeah.
The doctors don't think he's going to make it. So she was able, thank God, she was able to have me on August 2020 be able to enter the hospital.
Oh, that's great.
And so I got there around noon, and that's when the doctor came in and unplugged him from the life support.
Yeah.
And told us that he only had a few hours. And by 5 o'clock, he was still with us. He was fighting it. He was fighting it.
Yeah.
He was fighting it. And it just, everything got too emotional with his wife being there and his daughter, Ashley. And I felt that they needed privacy. And so I left. And within a few hours, he left us.
Yeah, and what a legacy he left behind. But both as a musician and as a human being. One thing I love about the Quiet Riot documentary that was made that you mentioned was just the discipline and just the way that that he sheds those stereotypes. I think a lot of times rock musicians get that stereotype like it's all just one big party. But I love the discipline that he lived his life with. Even with the martial arts and the study of the sword and all that stuff. I just really think it speaks volumes to the type of mindset that he approached his life with. Just a certain determination and a laser focus on what was really important in life.
Yeah, I met him in 1972 on my birthday, November 18th, 1972. And he was the first musician I met with the level of musical integrity you need to make it in the music industry. Like we were going back about giving advice to younger musicians. And again, it's all about the collective musical integrity or integrity in your life that transfer to everything else that you do.
Right.
Because that's going to attract the collective consciousness of other musicians with musical integrity.
Yeah.
You're going to gather together. You'll pull towards each other, and that's where you need a band like that.
Yeah.
To really survive. You can make it without. You can have like 2 or 3 people with integrity and the rest not. And they just kind of like, carry on with the other. But to make it through the end, all the way through, and maintain that unit, you need a collective musical integrity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And Frankie obviously very sorely missed, as is Kevin. Obviously there's been a lot of turmoil and tragedy there, losing a couple members like that. I certainly think back to that classic lineup for me, and this is not to impugn Randy Rhoads or Kelly, who I've had on here before, any other guys in the band, but I think when people really think about that classic lineup, they think Kevin and you and Frankie and Carlos, the mental health condition critical era. So, and you guys just have given us such great music. I mean, just to have those songs, you can't timestamp them to any one period. I mean, you turn on a Come On Feel the Noise or any of those songs from that album, they stand the test of time.
Personally, my journey with Quiet Riot began when I joined in 78.
Yeah.
And having played with Randy and experienced his integrity, the biggest, musicians like, let's say, Ronnie James Dio, so much integrity. Yeah. But just because Randy was born into the musical family, that was separates him from everybody else. I haven't played with other musicians where they came from a academic musical background, like Randy did, and actually would give up their stardom to go back to school.
Right. Yeah. That's rare. That's rare. Yeah.
That's like, I've never heard of that before or since, And so to me, my journey with Quiet Riot being my home, because again, it was collective consciousness of what the aim of the being in the band was, to get a record deal and become professional musicians. And this is what we do for a living. We never talked about politics, religion. Girls never got in the way. It was all about the music, right?
Right.
Okay. So that was ingrained into what the essence of Quiet Riot was.
Right.
And then when I joined Ozzy, here I am playing with Randy, and he's taking his musical integrity to a whole different level. And then he passes. Yeah. It's not there anymore. That's missing in my life, that element. Yeah. Not that the other guys didn't have musical integrity, but we didn't have the same consciousness that we get in Quiet Riot. Right. When I joined Ozzy was already a big star. Sure. In Black Sabbath. Yep. Tommy Aldridge was a big star from Black Oak, Arkansas, and Pat Travers. Randy and I were brand new. Yeah. Yeah. So we were pretty much Quiet Riot. Right. It was like 2 guys from Quiet Riot playing with Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah. Basically. So we were fresh from that. There had not been a 15-year trajectory at that point with us. Right. It was starting brand new. And that was really fresh. That's what I really connected with in the band, with Randy and me, going through this adventure. And then he's not there anymore.
Right.
And I was lost. Plus, I was younger. Everybody was younger. 40 years ago, I didn't have the knowledge that I have now to deal with a
You
loss
grieve
like
differently.
that.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now I know about the importance of celebrating that memory of the musicians that you created this music with, because if you don't, it will go away. And that's one of the things that I was talking to Frankie about in the documentary. And that's one of the things that I agreed to come back home to Quiet Riot. Because if I didn't, well, it wasn't going to happen. I at this level, of me being able to celebrate the memory of my bandmates who are no longer with us.
Right.
And so when Kevin called me up to come in, I was getting ready to go do Speak of the Devil in New York, live at the Ritz, 2 nights with Brad Gillis and Tommy Aldrich and Ozzy. I got a phone call from Kevin. Hey, you want to come down? And we're in the studio. We're kind of like working on a possible record here. And, we're going to record Thunderbird. Now, I had been playing that song with Kevin in his band Dubrow and living with Kevin right up until when I joined Ozzy. So I knew the song. And so I said, yeah, I come down and there's Frankie. Now, Frankie and I, we have been for 10 years struggling to be doing what we're doing that moment, which is to be in a recording studio recording.
Here it is. Here's the dream. Yeah.
Here it is. And of course, I had a 10-year history with him. I had a history with Kevin being in the Randy Rhoads version of Quiet Riot and playing with him in Dubrow, living with him. So there was family. The family that I lost when Randy died, I gained back.
Yeah.
When I started playing with Kevin and Frankie. Carlos, I never met before. We might have been in the same bill, but we had never played together or had a conversation because he was in a band called Snow playing around town, and at the time the band was still called Dubrow. It did not officially call Quiet Riot until October.
Right. When
the newsletter that was for Dubrow had the Quiet Riot logo again and announcing that I was back in the band, that I had left Ozzy. So, here I am, I have this experience. And then by the time I left that session, I had recorded 4 songs for the Mental Health record. I thought they were going to be demos. My gear is on its way to New York. Well, I got my practice bass with me. That's what I recorded those 4 songs with, like by Cadillac and a couple of others from the Dubrow period that wound up on the Mental Health record. And so I go to New York and I record Speak of the Devil, but the thought of lingering of like how good it felt, the joy of to be playing with Frankie and Kevin again, kept lingering. And by the time I went back to LA, I gave notice to Sharon that I was leaving, Ozzy to join, what became known as Quiet Riot. And there was no promise of anything that success or anything. Of course, I had some money because I saved money from touring with Ozzy, but the other guys in the band, they had to like borrow money, gas money to go in the studio. It was a production deal. Yeah. It wasn't even straight with the major label. It was the Pasha Records distributed through Epic. Right. And that was it.
So a lot of the documentary, well, not a lot of documentary, but a good portion of it really focuses on Frankie, sort of more or less emotionally and mentally kind of reconciling and dealing with the loss of Kevin. What was that period like for you? And obviously Kevin, it's widely publicized. Obviously, he entered a dark period in his life. It didn't end well. Could anybody have reached Kevin at that point, or was Kevin's addictions just had they overwhelmed him by that point?
I wasn't around at that time because he passed away in 2007, I believe. Right. And the band imploded in 2003. We had the reunion.
Right. I almost felt like Frankie in the documentary almost was carrying around like a little bit of guilt, like he felt like he could have interceded and done more, which is not fair to do to himself. But
no, it's not fair. It's not fair because let's say with Ozzy when Randy died, right? Ozzy get drunk and say, it should have been me. Right. Survival remorse,
Right.
which is very normal. You have to like go through that period and somehow, get to get to the next level of
Right.
it,
Right.
of grief, and so yeah, and he was very apprehensive of going back out there, uh, with Quiet Riot. But like I told him, listen, if it's in the documentary. I tell Frankie, if you do not go out there and celebrate the memory of your friend, nobody else going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was, yeah. And then I took the advice I gave him. I gave it to myself
Yeah.
when I came back in the band. So
Yeah. Well, listen, Rudy, I've kept you on here for the better part of an hour, and I could sit here and talk to you all day long, man. It's been such an honor and such a pleasure to be able to talk with you. Obviously, people can go find out all their Quiet Riot details on the website, tour dates, all that kind of stuff coming up. Do you yourself have any other projects, or is Quiet Riot pretty much your main focus right now? Anything else you're doing?
Well, besides the bank, the charity organization. No, musically, I mean, I like to be creative. So, I have certain friends of mine that I trust their taste as producers who contact me and they ask me, hey, do you want to play on this song or this record and things like that. Yeah, so it kind of like gives me a creative outlet. But we're doing a lot of dates. We're doing about 70 dates at least this year.
Mm-hmm.
We really kick off the touring season coming up in May, and they just keep adding dates, which is better than actually having a tour set, because a tour there has to be a routing,
right?
And so we do flyways. We can be anywhere,
right?
So we get all these little surprises. Oh, you've been asked to do this festival. Oh, great! Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to know what you guys are putting in the water there in the Sarzo household, because you look fantastic, man. 72 years old. I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it in a million years, Rudy. What's going on over there? Have you discovered the fountain of youth?
Yes, I shave.
Is that what you're hinting at here, Rudy? A little more shaving on my end?
Just a little bit more shaving.
A little more shaving. Fair enough. I mean, I can't knock advice from the great Rudy Sarzo. I mean, I know my wife would agree with you 100% because she likes to
but you know what? On my end, I want to thank you for what you do. Taking care, being in the medical profession.
My pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure. It is rewarding to be in a field where you give back, and I certainly think, even though a lot of people might not look at it that way, that music is just as powerful, if not more powerful, than a lot of these medications that the pharmaceutical companies are pushing. I'm not saying that it'll necessarily get rid of everything, but I think a little more music in people's life would go a long way. It really would.
Yeah, my 97-year-old mom moved in with my wife and me, and she lives with us.
Yeah,
about a year and a half ago. So I am very up on medications. As a matter of fact, I got to take her to the doctor in a few hours. For a checkup. But I go through all the medications, and then my wife goes on Google and checks to make sure what the side effects. You
got to keep yourself privy to your own, to your own care. It is important to go and do that research and check things out. And I mean, doctors are only human too. It is what it is. But listen, Rudy, it's been a pleasure and an honor, man. And I hope we can keep in touch and we can do this again sometime.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Rudy. I appreciate it. Thank you, buddy.
God bless you.
All right. Take it easy. God bless you. Bye-bye.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
And now if Rudy knows how to disconnect, there he goes. Ladies and gentlemen, and we don't edit nothing here, so we always like to make sure that the guest gets out of our chat room, so to speak. And sometimes it's fun watching them not be able to do it too, as we've seen on past episodes. But that is the great Rudy Sarzo. I shouldn't even need to go over the resume, folks. Quiet Riot, Ozzy Osbourne, Whitesnake. That should be the end right there. That is 10 fucking careers right there. That is a musician's wet dream right there, to have worked with all those just iconic bands. And Rudy Sarzo, an iconic bass player, an iconic staple of the music scene for, the better part of 50 years. And just awesome having him just take us down take us down the path of his life and his career, and what a career it's been. And God bless him, 72 fucking years old, for God's sakes. I mean, the man is still out there doing it. Go to quietriot.com or whatever the website is. Google your Quiet Riot. Go out and see. They're out there celebrating 40 years of the 1983 epic seminal album, Mental Health. If you don't know it, I pity you. I pity you. You should know it. You should know everything that Rudy Sarzo has been on. Go do your fucking homework, people. Come on. That is the great Rudy Sarzo. I appreciate him beyond words for coming on here and chopping it up with me. And I hope you guys, Keith, huh? A big one, huh? Fucking Rudy Sarzo. We enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And let me implore you, until we meet again, to take it easy and keep it sleazy.